Hello and welcome back, fellow Pokemon fans. I am Joe Picorni.
And I'm John Hu, back from lunch break, and we are back with round 4. We have Nick Navarre
And Nate Sitler.
and they are going to be, I think, 2-1 going into this round. So, Nate Sitler, of course, an Indiana local. He just aged up into the Masters Division. He placed second at Internets, North American Internets, in the Senior Division. This time, he's going to be bringing Tapu Koko, Mimikyu, Marowak, Tapu Fini, Celesteela, and Crocodile.
And Nick is going to be bringing that Arcanine, that Kartana, that Alolan Persian, the Snorlax, the Tapu Fini, and the Tapu Koko.
Alright, so we got some common Tapus here, but the rest of the team looks vastly different from both sides. It looks like Nails is going for more of a less speed control variant team, more of a, I'm just going to hit you as hard as I can, maybe as fast as I can.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, Nate Sitler, always a fan of that Mimikyu. So this time not paired with his commonly, we see in the past, Pheromosa and Lucario. So this time maybe a little more conservative on that Trick Room approach.
Absolutely. And another thing that Nails has on his team is that even if he doesn't want to necessarily hit something hard, he can just use the parting shot from his Alolan Persian to maybe weaken the damage on one of the mons that he wants to bring in.
Yeah, and so these two players have played before, I believe, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Nate Sitler is still making a pretty strong case for his age up into Masters. He's improving with every step, so I do expect a good battle from here.
Alright, as we're looking to hop right into it, Nails might actually have timed out there.
Well, maybe timed out, but had his Pokemon selected.
Yeah,
a lot of players do like to do that. If you don't know, if you don't select all your Pokemon, the game chooses for you, of course, but if you have 4 Pokemon selected, the game will go with the 4 you selected.
Maybe like a little bit of a mind game there just to make them think maybe he didn't finish picking his Pokemon. Alright, so as we do see Nate lead off with that Tapu Koko and that Mimikyu.
And Nail's going to lead with Persian and Kartana, so pretty interesting leads here. Mimikyu is pretty free to get off a Trick Room right now. Yeah, Tapu Koko does have that Volt Switch potential.
Yeah, and right now I think that Kartana is not in too great of a position, even though it can just Leaf Blade or Smart Strike into that Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko will most likely be able to live.
Alright, so Kartana not gonna be looking too great right now. Mimikyu does have Disguise up, and of course Nick could double into Mimikyu to stop Trick Room from going up. That is certainly an option, but letting Tapu Koko get off a free attack, that's not so Gucci.
Especially when you are sitting with a Mon weak to Dazzling Gleam and a Mon that is paper thin on the special defense side. So right now I think making sure that that Trick Room though is very important. So let's see what Nick is able to do on this turn.
Here comes Fake Out, gonna stop Tapu Koko from Volt Switching if it was going to do that. And Kartana is gonna set up a substitute, so preparing itself for if Trick Room does drop, which, you know, Nate looked like he was going to, but instead went for that play rough, doing a good amount of damage to Persian, leaving it right outside that barrier.
Ooh, that's a very tough missing out on that. Because now that Persian is no longer going to be able to take too many attacks unless it does get that berry procced by something else. But now that Kartana has that substitute, he is sitting pretty behind that substitute.
Sitting pretty and small.
Yeah.
Since the substitute does actually vary with size of the Pokemon, so Kartana's is particularly small, while something as big as maybe Celesteela has a much bigger sub.
Absolutely. One thing I was surprised by is how large Politoed is in that exhibition match.
Yeah, Poliwag was pretty big.
Poliwag.
Yeah, pretty big and did a lot of work. So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, these players have gotten down to the time, so we'll see what they do now. Nick is gonna withdraw his Persian in favor of Arcanine, gonna take that resisted Dazzling Gleam, get an Intimidate onto Mimikyu. Still Disguise intact, so this turn Mimikyu is gonna get to do something.
As that Tapu Koko does just go for the Thunderbolt into the Kartana slot, breaking that substitute.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that one. Dazzling Gleam definitely could have broken it as well, I think, but, you know, maybe he just wanted to dodge a potential, I guess, Protect on Persian. Persian does not really run Protect, but sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, but even then, if the Dazzling Gleam would have been able to pardon me, to break that substitute, that still probably would have been the better play, but maybe he just wanted to guarantee that that substitute didn't stick around.
We did see that there's no life orb on Tapu Koko, so maybe Nate knows his team better than we do. Maybe he knows that the Dazzling Gleam isn't enough to break that substitute, in which case Thunderbolt would have been, the right play there. As, Mimikyu gets to size broken, but Tapu Koko is still fine here.
Absolutely. All right. So we see that Arcanine is just sitting there, and unfortunately, Arcanine, even though it can be trained pretty specially defensive, and we normally see that, without knowing that item from the Tapu Koko, it could be the mighty Electrium Z.
Detect from Nick's Kartana means it's not going to be taking any of this stuff right now. Sky Drop into that Detect.
And we see the Arcanine just go for the Flare Blitz into that Tapu Koko.
Doing a lot of damage here. It is worth noting that this is a more bulky Tapu Koko, so that might indicate something of its item. But again, we don't know until we know.
Absolutely, and the Mimikyu just sets up that Trick Room.
And now Mimikyu's looking pretty okay, but not doing a whole lot with a -1 attack. So maybe Nate wants to get that out into his Marowak, which I think is the only other slow Pokemon on his team.
Yeah,
I suppose he does have Celesteela, so he could switch into that, but I mean, it's Arcanine. You probably don't want to switch into that.
yeah, Celesteela may not be the correct switch in, because Flare Blitz is always a scary thing, no matter what kind of Celesteela you are, but we do see the Mimikyu switch on out for that Marowak.
Yeah, and Marowak is pretty fantastic here, aside from, not giving Tapu Koko the ability to use electric-type moves, besides Discharge, and, Nate's okay with Tapu Koko just going down to a Flare Blitz this turn, so no harm, no foul, no electric move anyway. Kartana here is going to go for that Z move.
And it looks like it's going to be the Bloom Doom here coming out from that Kartana.
Yeah, it would have been really terrible if that was a Z fighting, Z Fightinium, because, Marowak doesn't even care about that.
Yeah, it would have just passed right through him. But this Bloom Doom is going to do probably a halfway decent amount of damage.
Yeah, it is resisted, though. Kartana with a massive attack stat still does a lot of damage with a resisted hit.
Even over 50%, even though it's resisted. Alright, so right now, even though Nate got up that Trick Room, so far it hasn't really done too much for him. But let's see if he can turn that around with the Tapu Fini and with that Marowak.
Yeah, so Tapu Fini coming in here is pretty good. The Kartana is definitely threatened by Marowak, and Tapu Fini covers that Arcanine so well. Especially since, it is in that range of just getting knocked out by Muddy Water, since usually you can take it at full health, but below full health, Arcanine's got some troubles.
Absolutely. And without even knowing what kind of Tapu Fini and how it's trained, that could be another potential factor that Nick has to consider, pardon me, when leaving that Arcanine in.
Yep, I would not be surprised to see a switch out here, or maybe a double protect to maybe scout, burn a turn of Trick Room. Meanwhile, Nate may have tools to take advantage of that double protect if he's carrying setup moves on Marowak. Some of them like to run Substitute. I know I used Swords Dance before, but those are high risk moves that sometimes don't pay off, and he may or may not have.
Absolutely, and that Tapu Fini could also go for that Calm Mind if it is running it, but Arcanine just goes for that Protect there.
Shadow Bone from Marowak going to connect with Kartana. Interesting choice.
Tapu Fini goes for the Moon Blast into that Kartana slot.
I really like that play. I think to Nate, he kind of knew that Arcanine was threatened and was either going to switch or protect. So he went for the Moon Blast with a double up into Kartana, so he didn't have to take that recoil from Flare Blitz.
Absolutely. Because Flare Blitz recoil, when you're below half health, could be doing a little bit too much for it to be worth it.
Persian in here can definitely fake out that Tapu Fini, but Marowak is still free to go for that Shadow Bone onto Arcanine. And, I don't know if it's enough. We don't know how much attack investment Nate has given to his Marowak, but Thick Club doubling that attack means it's no joke.
Thick Club is always a scary item, and with that Persian on the field, I think he has to consider. And also, it can run Bone Meringue depending on if that Arcanine is running a Berry. It could take a good bit of damage from that Bone Meringue.
Yeah, for sure. Persian definitely is threatened, though, by either of these two Pokemon, and, Arcanine can't really do much damage to either as well, barring maybe a Thief. Tapu Fini is going to actually withdraw for Mimikyu.
Alright, and we see that Persian just go for the fake out into the Mimikyu slot, and Marowak go for the Flare Blitz.
Flare Blitz going to take out Persian for sure. Fur Coat is good and all, but it's not going to save you from a doubled attack Marowak. Take a little bit of recoil here as Arcanine goes for its own Flare Blitz.
Alright, that Flare Blitz is going to do a good amount of damage to that Marowak. Not quite enough to pick up the KO.
Really unfortunate there by surviving, because now Marowak, since it's immune to extreme speed, still has that, you know, Lightning Rod to support because the Tapu Koko is hitting the field, and it has that potential to just knock out Arcanine with another Shadow Bone. So, with Mimikyu back on the field, it's also pretty safe to set it up again if need be.
Absolutely. So right now, if I'm Nate, I'm pretty happy with my position, even though my Marowak is very, very weak at this point. A Shadow Bone might be able to pick up that Arcanine, and if not, does have the option to go for that Koko and let the Feeny in the back handle the Arcanine if that Koko is able to go down. But only time will tell what these two go for.
Players taking their time. Tapu Fini in the back to override terrain is important as well, so we can still come in and take at least one electric move, probably. We haven't really seen the item on Mimikyu yet, so it could be something different.
Alright, as we actually see that Marowak switch out for the Tapu Fini, maybe predicting Nick to not want to go for a Thunderbolt because of the Marowak.
And Misty Surge going to take over that terrain. Arcanine is going to go for that Protect, doesn't want to get knocked out just yet, wants to save that Flare Blitz power. Another Protect from Tapu Koko as well, needs to get out of that Trick Room in a bad way, as Nate reveals that he's carrying Barium Z on Mimikyu for that Twinkle Tackle.
Twinkle Tackle is always such a nice surprise move on that Mimikyu. It always helps out with so many matchups. The Salamence and Metagross matchup, it always helps against that, and since that is always going to be a common thing this year, I think it's a nice one to have. But doing a little bit of damage to that Tapu Koko is always nice, even though it didn't do too much.
Alright, Twisted Dimensions are wearing off, so now Nick has to contend with his Tapu Fini, as well as Mimikyu, possibly setting up another Trick Room. Of course, if you want to stop Mimikyu from Trick Rooming, it's best to double up into it, but you know that leaves your Arcanine and your Tapu Koko open to attack by Tapu Fini.
Absolutely, and if you're Nick, you have to think that I can't freely Thunderbolt into that Mimikyu because of the Marowak in the back, so I might have to Dazzling Gleam and then Flare Blitz. But that will obviously be doing a little bit less than the Thunderbolt.
A little less, but I think it would still be enough in this scenario. So Dazzle, Flare Blitz, probably Nick's best play, but looks like Nate's actually going to switch out Mimikyu for Marowak. Very interesting play. It does guarantee that this Z, or not this Z, I guess this electric move, if it's a electric move, yeah. So this Thunderbolt goes nowhere, and you know, Fini gets a free attack regardless.
Absolutely.
So excellently played by Nate here, as Tapu Fini goes for that Scald into the Tapu Koko, surprisingly, but gets the knockout. So indicating to Nick maybe what kind of set this Tapu Fini is running.
Alright, that was a very well played turn by Nate because of the switch in. Now this Marowak and the Tapu Fini have all but sealed this game for him.
Yeah, Nick will have to address these problems in the second game going forward. And, you know, actually it looks like Tapu Fini is outpacing that Arcanine. So maybe Nick running a bit of a slower this time around. Because you don't usually typically expect the Fini to be outspeeding when it's on a Trick Room team.
Absolutely. Tapu Fini, not exactly the fastest mon around, but I mean, it can get pretty up there, but typically don't expect that.
So Nate's going to be taking that game 1 and moving into game 2 with the newfound knowledge that Nick is carrying a Gracium Z Kartana with Substitute, and that his Arcanine is slower than his own Fini.
Absolutely. So let's hop right into that game too. So I think if I'm Nick, I think I do have to deny Trick Room a little bit better, because even though his Arcanine is in fact slower than that Fini, I still think Nate is able to get more mileage out of that Trick Room.
Right, and Marowak, you know, having those clutch survivals play out, even though it took a lot of damage on the switch-ins, you know, kind of led to this victory because you could still use it as utility for that Lightning Rod, and Nick really can't do very much with Lightning Rod around if he's going to use Tapu Koko like that.
Absolutely. That is always one thing that you have to consider when you're running Tapu Koko, because Tapu Koko is such a good mon that people always have to run something to counter it, and in that case, the Lightning Rod is such a good way to stop any damage from that Tapu Koko going out.
Right, and we didn't see Celesteela or Crocodile from Nate this time, and perhaps he doesn't feel the need since, you know, Nick's not packing any ground types, he's not packing very many physical attackers, at least not, I guess he's not concerned about those since they also hit the Crocodile pretty hard, or that Marowak can deal with most of them. As Nate locks in, and he's ready to go, Nail's probably going to do the same strategy as last time, let the clock run out by itself. I think I'm good to go.
Yeah, I expect a player of that caliber to always be ready, always have a plan going into the second game. But let's hop right into the second game. Alright, as we see Trainer Nails issuing a challenge, and he sends out his Arcanine and his Persian.
Alright, double domesticated animals lead. And we see the same lead from Nate, Mimikyu, and Tapu Koko.
Alright, so if I'm Nick, I think if I have the taunt on my Persian, I think now would be the time to use it onto that Mimikyu. Now that you know that it's in fact not Mental Herb, I think that is a very important thing for Nick to deny, because Trick Room really was a helping factor in last game.
Yeah, that's true, but you know, Nate last time just went straight for the play rough, didn't even bother trying to set up Trick Room, maybe accounting for that taunt option. And so Nick definitely doesn't want to waste that turn taunting when Nate could just attack.
Alright, as we see Nate switch out in that Tapu Fini here.
Gonna set up Misty Surge, gonna negate that electric boost for his own Tapu Koko as Parting Shot comes out onto Tapu Fini, so nailing that Tapu Fini and switching out for something a little more favorable for the matchup.
Absolutely, maybe making sure that from this point on that Scald or potential Muddy Water won't be doing that much to his Arcanine.
Nick could bring in the Kartana here and threaten the Tapu Fini, but I mean, he's already gotten it weak. I don't think he wants it to switch out, so Snorlax is coming in.
Alright, and Snorlax is too heavy to be lifted by Tapu Koko Skydrop as a Flare Blitz just goes right into that Tapu Koko.
Yeah, gonna do a lot of damage once again. So, you know, Tapu Koko was doing some work last game, but this game, it looks like Nick made the call, brought in something so heavy that it couldn't be picked up, and Tapu Koko's turn was wasted there.
Absolutely. Running a mixed Koko is always so much fun because it does give you that ability to just occasionally, if you need to, just say, alright, you're coming with me for a turn, so my partner can focus on something else, and that's always a nice option.
Yeah, so Fini here is definitely threatening for Nick. It can definitely lock itself into something like Muddy Water or Scald, and you know, Snorlax, it's bulky but doesn't like to get hit by damage. It likes to, you know, keep its health. That's why it has a berry. It has Recycle for that berry. As we see Tapu Koko going to switch out for Nate, gonna bring back Mimikyu.
Alright, as we see that Mimikyu switch in, Arcanine actually just goes for that Protect right there.
Yeah, definitely going to scout what this Tapu Fini wants to lock itself into. It's gonna be that Scald. What is Snorlax gonna do? Frustration into Tapu Fini. Good call by Nick.
Doing a good bit of damage, just a little bit under half there.
With Mimikyu in, Sky is still up. It's still pretty good for Nate, even though Nate has been taking most of the damage this game.
Yeah, now if you're Nate, you know that right now probably not the best time to set up that Trick Room because that Snorlax is just chilling there, and Snorlax is slower than anything Nate has on his team.
Right.
Alright, so now I think we could probably see that Arcanine switch out here, not wanting to take that Scald, even though it is at -1. Oh.
Mimikyu gonna go for that play rough into Arcanine, maybe calling for a switch or something, maybe just making it weak enough to be picked off by the Scald 100%. And it is going to miss out on the KO just barely, so maybe a Shadow Claw or something like that. If he had it, would have been a better play, but Arcanine's going to get all that health back thanks to his berry.
And he goes for that Flare Blitz with his Arcanine into that Mimikyu, breaking its disguise.
Yeah, so we had Nate with the clutch survivals in game 1, and now it's Nick's turn to show his Pokemon survival abilities.
All right, and that Snorlax goes for another frustration, doing a good bit of damage, knocking that Tapu Fini down to red HP.
Yeah, supposing that this Arcanine has extreme speed, Tapu Fini is in danger of losing its ability to fight here. Mimikyu, you know, having its disguise broken isn't that great either, especially considering what Nate had to do to get there. Arcanine didn't drop, which is I'm pretty sure is what he wanted. And, you know, that sets him back quite a bit as far as this battle goes.
Absolutely, as Arcanine actually is carrying that extreme speed and is able to pick up that knockout on the Tapu Fini.
Yeah, so Nate down him on, but, you know, he's going to fight back. He's going to put up a Swords Dance right here, make his Mimikyu a little more threatening as Snorlax goes for the Curse.
All right, so that Snorlax is going to get nice, slow, and bulky.
And it still has all of its HP intact, so this could get out of hand if Nate doesn't address this immediately.
Absolutely. That's one thing that Snorlax does have, is that it does have the ability to just sit there like a wall and just be there for the entire game. And if it is able to recycle, it will not ever be knocked out.
Alright, so Mimikyu at +2 though, it's pretty threatening. I wouldn't say it's super threatening, but you know, it's dealing some more damage to something like Snorlax, who did just get a +1 defense boost. The +2 is going to offset that a little bit.
Alright, but that Arcanine right now is actually pretty threatened by that Tapu Koko. Because of the speed matchups, I think that Tapu Koko will be able to be knocked out by that extreme speed at this point. But it's going to be close, depending on how Nick has his Arcanine trained.
Yeah, and you know, this is a little bit of a bulkier Tapu Koko, so I wouldn't be surprised if Extreme Speed didn't pick up the knockout. And you know, Nick's not going to play games like that. He's just going to protect. A very safe play here, non-committal. Skydrop, going to go into that protect as well.
Alright, as we do see Mimikyu go for another Swords Dance here.
He's trying to put all his eggs in one basket, and that basket is Mimikyu. So we'll see what happens. Frustration from Snorlax is going to definitely take out Tapu Koko from this range, especially at +1. So Nate down to his last 2 Pokemon. I wonder what they'll be.
If I'm Nate, I am not super happy about that position right now. But with the Marowak coming in, he does have a little bit of options.
Yeah, Marowak coming in is good as long as Snorlax only is carrying one attacking type. But, you know, most Snorlax, I think, do still run high horsepower as their option. Usually they forgo Protect. Though recently we have seen a resurgence of Protect running Snorlax with no high horsepower or maybe no setup support move.
Alright, but we do see the Fairy Z coming out from that Mimikyu.
Yeah, and this is a +4 attack Mimikyu, so this is going to be really strong. Will definitely knock out Arcanine, but will it knock out Snorlax?
It's certainly going to be close, I have a feeling. But let's see who he targets, as he does target down that Snorlax.
It's going to be close.
As it is able to pick up the knockout.
Maybe it wasn't close at all. I don't know my +4 Mimikyu calcs. Someone should probably help me on those. But here's a Flare Blitz for that Mimikyu, doing a lot of damage. No burn, a lot of recoil, and a Shadow Bone later. That Arcanine is donezo.
Alright, as that Arcanine will be able to get knocked out by this. So, as I think, so he's got, pardon me, Nick has the Alolan Persian in the back and one other Mon.
Yeah, and depending on what this Pokemon could be, it could be good or bad for Nick here. Remember, Marowak is providing Lightning Rod support, so if Tapu Koko was the last, which it's not, it's Kartana, then Nick would have been in quite a situation. But now that Nick has revealed that his last is Kartana, things are looking pretty good. He can just use Leaf Blade into Mimikyu and Foul Play Marowak a bunch until it faints.
Absolutely. Another option is that just basically the inverse is he could go for the Bloom Doom again, but actually that Mimikyu does have the Shadow Sneak, ensuring that it gets a little bit off before it does faint.
So Shadow Sneak going to do about 50% to Kartana here. Foul Play going to do way too much. And here's that Bloom Doom. So targeting one of these two Pokemon, I would suspect it's going into the Mimikyu. No reason to really conserve it because you want to be able to knock it out just in case that Mimikyu does carry Protect. Though we have seen its full set, there's not really big reason to go for the Mimikyu other than look cool now.
Yeah, give us a little bit something to talk about. Give us a little bit of more thumbnail material.
Thumbnail material. And there's that Beast Boost coming in. Flare Blitz going out. Who was going to hit?
And it looks like it's going into that Persian slot, doing a good amount of damage.
But this time, Fur Coat is going to come in, clutch here. Going to allow Persian to activate that berry, get all of its health back. And you know, Nate's left with a 5 HP Marowak. I think the game's over.
Yeah, I really don't think there's literally anything Nate can do to come back at this point unless he has the Bright Powder. I think that's pretty much his only win con at this
Bright
point.
Powder, Thick Club Marowak. Let's go.
All right, as we do see the foul play, just go out into it and pick up the KO.
All right, so Nick will be taking game 2, and that means we're going to be moving on to game 3 with about 24 minutes left on this the round timer. Players are making pretty good work here, at least for us, and reducing the break time for you guys. So, game 3, Nick adjusted by not bringing Tapu Koko, and that's, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Tapu Koko does look very strong against Nate's team because it does have Tapu Fini and as well as Celesteela, but he does have a Lightning Rod Mon and a Ground Mon. So that is something that always is scary for it. But, I mean, I do think that was obviously a good adjustment because he was able to pick up the game from there.
Yeah, I would say that Snorlax definitely put in most of the work here. Arcanine mostly just sat there and ate a bunch of hits, which, you know, Arcanine is known for doing. It is a bulky doggo. And the cat getting off that one parting shot was actually really crucial in helping that Arcanine survive that hit. Because otherwise, definitely would have been knocked out by Scald.
Absolutely. Nick, knowing his damage calcs, knowing how much damage each of these attacks are going to do, probably even knowing how much about how much they're going to do at -1. But I think an adjustment that we could see from Nate is maybe, now that the Tapu Koko has been scared away, he might be able to bring slightly more Tapu Koko weak mons.
Yeah, so Nate's going to lock in again, quite ahead of the clock, but Nick probably going to wait till the last moment to either lock in or just let the game lock itself in. Think a bit more about how he wants to play this game out. Definitely needs to conserve or use Persian wisely here, as well as the Snorlax, which we never really saw if it had highest horsepower or not.
Absolutely.
We only saw Frustration or Return, one of those two things.
Curse, and I don't even think we saw if it had Protect or Recycle at that point, did we?
Yeah, we did not. So we only know 2 of his moves. Definitely has a setup move, but we don't know whether he has Protect or High Power or like stockpile. I don't know.
Yeah.
He might be stockpiling those setup moves. If you know what I'm talking about. All right, but let's get into this game 3. Enough of us talking about what could and couldn't be. Maybe we should just let these players show what they've got to us.
Absolutely. All right, as we hop right into game 3, we see Nate lead off with that Tapu Koko and Mimikyu.
And Nick's going to lead with Persian and Snorlax, changing it up once again. He realizes that Snorlax was really good in that last game, so he's just going to lead with it this time. No need for Arcanine to come out here.
Absolutely. And another thing that he can do now is he can just set up a curse and fake out into that Tapu Koko. So he'll not take too much damage this turn.
Yeah, and we do have to watch out, though, because remember from last game, a +4 Mimikyu on +1 defense Snorlax, still one-hit KOs with the Twinkle Tackle. But, I mean, Persian here is definitely threatening Mimikyu. If it tries to set up too many Swords Dances, Persian can turn it against him by using Foul Play.
Foul Play is such a nice option against teams that do have the ability to set up a physical attacker because of the amazing damage output from it. But we see the Tapu Koko switch out into the Tapu Fini here for Nate.
Yeah, so Tapu Fini coming in here. It's pretty notable since it can definitely one-hit KO Persian with a Moonblast or a Dazzling Gleam. As parting shot going to come out into this Mimikyu, Nate's just going to take it this time. He doesn't really mind too much. Maybe he just went for that Swords Dance to get up, start stacking some boosts, get some good damage going. And switching into Fini at full power means that Nick can't just choose Arcanine anymore, but he can definitely choose Kartana.
Yeah, Kartana is going to be doing a good bit of damage as we do see that Mimikyu just set up a Swords Dance.
Yeah, so Swords Dance is up, and Snorlax is also trying to boost up here. It's going to be a little bit of a war to see who can boost up faster and who can start attacking sooner. Uh, Kartana definitely threatening Tapu Fini with this Bloom Doom, or even just plain old Leaf Blade if he wants to risk that biscuit.
Absolutely. So one thing that Nate will have to think about is that he's now at +1, so that Mimikyu is not going to be doing the amount of damage that it did last time. So he could continue to set up Swords Dance, but that might leave the Snorlax to get out of hand.
Right, and I would expect Tapu Fini switching out to something like Marowak, or if he adjusted and brought Celesteela, that would be a good switch in right now for this Cortana. But Nick could also read that and put up a substitute of his own, set up a little bit before dropping his Z move.
Absolutely. I really would like to see the adjustment from Nate to have that Celesteela. And we see him go out into
that Celesteela. So there's the adjustment here. He knows that Nick not likely to bring that Tapu Koko in Game 3 if he didn't bring it in Game 2, as Mimikyu going for another Swords Dance in front of this Kartana's Detect. He doesn't care. Mimikyu is just greedy.
All right, as the high horsepower, as he does reveal it, it does go into Mimikyu, breaking Mimikyu's disguise.
Yeah, so now, I don't know about that Swords Dance anymore, because now Nick can go for the Bloom Doom and knock Mimikyu straight out at the cost of its life, since Flamethrower is going to drop if
he is running
it. But, most of them do run it. I do think at this point in the metagame, it's pretty much mandatory that you're carrying Flamethrower on Celesteela, because even like the no investment minus nature still picks up that knockout.
Absolutely.
With a little bit of investment. So.
Because unfortunately for Kartana, it is not a very defensive or especially defensive Pokemon. So right now, I think that Mimikyu is in range of a Smart Strike, but that Snorlax really isn't going to be able to do too much to that Celesteela.
Yeah, Snorlax is going to have to start cursing up a bit more if it wants to try sticking around. But actually, it looks like Kartana is going to be switching out here. Going to be putting Arcanine back in. Very interesting decision. Going to make Mimikyu go back down to +2. And, nerfing Celesteela a bit more. But Shadow Sneak coming out for Nate. Going to do some good damage on Arcanine.
Ooh, that's a good amount of damage, as a Flamethrower does come out from that Celesteela as well, doing just a little bit of damage.
Snorlax going for another high horsepower, so really letting Snorlax do all of the heavy lifting here, but not enough to get that KO, of course. So Mimikyu definitely safe to go for another Shadow Sneak, but you'll probably pock the berry on Arcanine, maybe not the greatest of plans.
Absolutely. I think at this point, if I'm Nate, I think I would probably have to go for the Fairy Z move. But the question is, will it be able to do enough damage to the Arcanine? Because if he does it into the Snorlax, it'll probably just set it into its berry, and then you basically wasted your Z move.
Yeah, so Z Play Rough into Arcanine could be an option, and if it does KO from this range, just barely, then it's a good option regardless of whether the Arcanine protects or not, because if it protects, you leave it outside of berry range, and if it doesn't, it just gets knocked out. So this is really probably a good place to drop that Z move. Of course, you could drop it into the Snorlax, like you said, but maybe a wasted shot there.
All right, as we see the Celesteela go for Protect, as we do see that Z move come out from the Mimikyu.
All right, so Twinkle Tackle at +2 attack. Where's it going?
All right, and it looks like it's going into...
We'll see after this.
Yeah, Twinkle Tackle is actually, I believe it is the longest Z move animation, and it goes right into that Snorlax.
So... yeah, Nate deciding to maybe pop that berry before it does anything. And, man, that was still a lot of damage. If it were a +3 Mimikyu, might have been enough for the KO. But that's not the case, and high horsepower going to take out this Mimikyu.
All right, so Mimikyu really didn't get too much mileage out of its boost. But now that the Snorlax berry has been procced, maybe he doesn't have the chance to use it again. But we do see the Arcanine just sitting in front of a Celesteela, and Celesteela never likes that.
Yeah, so Tapu Fini coming in here is pretty big too, because it allows it to use Muddy Water, or Scald. There's 2 safe options there, but Muddy Water, famous for those accuracy drops, could start lowering that Snorlax's accuracy, and that actually gives it a prime time for Celesteela to start setting up those Leech Seeds on Snorlax.
Absolutely. But one thing that Celesteela, if it's not able to really hit through that Snorlax, eventually Snorlax can just get to +6/+6.
Right, and then it's definitely doing some damage back. We still haven't seen Recycle if it has it, and that's a big problem for Nate going forward here. But Nick is going to withdraw Arcanine into Persian. A very interesting switch here. Nate, however, gonna go for the Moonblast into that Persian. What a read.
Absolutely. And that is able to pick up the KO.
So Persian, maybe not the right switch there. Leech Seed is going to come down on Snorlax. Going to be starting that long-winded war as Frustration drops down into Tapu Fini.
Doing
a little
just
over
over
half.
half. All right, and now Snorlax is getting drained by those Leech Seeds, making sure that Celesteela will be at full HP.
Misty Terrain goes away, but, I don't think either player was really using status in the first place, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, right now I think I'm pretty happy with my position if I am Nate. As we did see, the Tapu Fini outsped that Arcanine, but unfortunately, unless he is able to change up his moves, Moonblast probably won't be able to pick up the KO from this position.
Right, and we'll also probably proc that Berry, so maybe a Moonblast into Snorlax we could see. We could also see Tapu Fini kind of going out so he can rearrange its moves. I think we've played this game out long enough to know that it's probably choiced. And so I think for Nate, switching out Tapu Fini could be a play that he can make. He does know that Kartana is in the back. As long as Celesteela is around, get Kartana is checked.
Absolutely. So, right now, I think that Celesteela definitely needs to protect from that Arcanine. It's going to take so much damage from that Flare Blitz. All right. Right now, I think if he is a max invested Celesteela, he would be able to live, but we do see that Tapu Fini switch out for
Tapu Koko. So Tapu Koko here is okay with taking any kind of abuse from these Pokemon. Perhaps Nate doesn't really need it anymore and realizes that Tapu Fini is rather the Pokemon he would want to face this Arcanine. And, Flare Blitz, the obvious choice here. There's not much else Nick can do.
And Snorlax does reveal that Recycle, making sure that he is going to be able to continue to munch on those berries indefinitely.
Yeah, and it's actually going to proc right now as Leech Seed puts him right below half health. But this is pretty interesting now because Nate has that Tapu Koko. Its abilities to use Thunderbolt in terrain might be enough to knock out this Arcanine. And we still don't know what item Nate's Tapu Koko is running. But I assume that Thunderbolt is enough for this Arcanine to get knocked out. We don't know.
It's certainly going to be close. But that Arcanine does have the ability to protect, so that is something that he could consider because that Snorlax does have that high horsepower and will most likely be able to pick up the KO onto the Koko.
Right. And so that's something that Nate will have to consider here. I do think it does have Protect of its own. I think we saw it in Game 1 when they were doing Koko mirrors. I think they had Koko mirrors. Maybe I'm misremembering from a different set. But, we do know it has Skydrop. We do know it has Thunderbolt. That's what we know.
Absolutely. All right, as we see, the Arcanine actually does go for the Protect there.
And Tapu Koko going to go for that Thunderbolt into Protect as Celesteela also going to try Leech Seeding that slot too.
And the high horsepower from Snorlax is able to connect with that Tapu Koko and knock it out.
Get that knockout, fresh knockout. So this is looking like it could turn into a long drawn battle here between Celesteela and Snorlax, since the only Pokemon remaining on Nate's side is Tapu Fini. And, I don't think Nick's going to just let his Arcanine go away. He's just going to switch into that Kartana and let it go down.
Absolutely, and that means if Nick does have a Heavy Slam, that means I believe he would be at -3 after that Arcanine switches back in, making its damage even worse against the already incredibly heavy Snorlax. So I think Nick is in a pretty good position at this point.
Yeah, so it's going to come down to basically how much PP can Celesteela stall out from Snorlax's Recycles. We know it's used 1, so this is pretty much even since we've seen Celesteela Protect also only once. Here is a Muddy Water. Connects on both Pokemon. If it gets an accuracy drop on Snorlax and it misses, could be big. But we'll see here.
All right, as the Kartana actually does get the drop, as we see Flamethrower going into that Kartana as well.
Yeah, so Kartana definitely not going to be taking that Flamethrower. Burning up to bits, cinders, Ashes, whatever you want. And Celesteela is going to gain that special defense beast boost. Not quite the defense boost for this scenario, but
Yeah.
maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to take both Flare Blitz and whatever Snorlax has to offer.
It's certainly going to be close. I do believe you do have to be absolute maximum with your Celesteela to live all Flare Blitzes, but I mean, Arcanine could be a little bit of a more bulky variant, so he could have the chance to live this. But whether that matters, we'll see how much he is able to recover from these Leech Seeds.
All right, and looks like he is going to have to start laying down those Leech Seeds in order to start surviving these turns. Celesteela does not have ways to deal damage by attacking Arcanine, so he's just going to have to wait all these turns out as Flare Blitz goes all the way down.
Ooh.
That's a lot of damage. Puts Arcanine into his own berry range. That's going to be good amount of HP back for Arcanine, like way more than is probably going to happen. Leech Seed does connect, so that is good on Nate's side, but can he live this frustration?
If not, I still think that Nick is going to have this game, but if not, Snorlax is able to pick up the KO.
And Nick is going to take
wins.
round 4 over Nate Sitler with 10 minutes left in the round timer. So excellently played from both sides. Nate had the right idea with that read, but couldn't quite, keep that momentum since he had to switch. That awkward restriction of choice specs, limiting his options versus that Arcanine.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, Nate, it is not looking good that he is going to be able to make it in a top cut, but Nick looking like he's on his way.
All right, and so with that, we will see you guys in the next round, the final round of Swiss, and just a minute.